Bring back COVID restrictions in England or face a winter crisis, a warning from the NHS. The Prime Minister's being urged to trigger so-called Plan B as COVID infections and deaths increase. The government resists the demand, ruling out to ITV News another national lockdown.
Can you rule out another lockdown this winter?
Yes.
Also this lunchtime, the Queen cancels a planned trip to Northern Ireland after doctors tell her to rest. The university students boycotting nightclubs after reports of attackers spiking young women with injections. And Cameron Norrie on the Raducanu effect and how she influenced him to win.
She, I think, chopped up everyone's straight sets, won pretty comfortably all her matches, so that was definitely inspiring for me.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. The Business Secretary ruled out today a winter national lockdown for England as pressure mounts on the government to reintroduce tougher restrictions because of rising COVID cases and deaths. The NHS Confederation, which represents health trusts, has called on ministers to trigger the government's Plan B, making face coverings mandatory, bringing in the use of vaccine passports and telling people to work from home if they can. With more, here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
No cause for alarm, says the government. The current plan to keep COVID at bay with no restrictions in England is working. But could they be reimposed or even a lockdown over the winter? Can you rule out another lockdown this winter?
Yes.
Whatever the case rates. You just said that you will look at the data very carefully. If the death rates, the cases do get out of control, why not consider...
So you're coming up with a lot of hypotheticals. I think we've had a huge job of work to get to the point where we've reopened the economy. I strongly believe that we will not have to go into lockdown, and that's why I'm ruling it out.
Deaths are rising. Yesterday there were 223 across the UK, but the rate is still much lower than the peak of 1,820 in January. 7,749 patients are currently being treated for COVID in hospital. At the peak, there were 39,000. Last month, the Prime Minister said Plan A was working, but suggested that in England, Plan B could involve a range of different measures.
What I would stress about Plan B is that it contains a number of different shots in the locker.
What could trigger a move in that direction is the slow rollout of COVID booster jabs. The Chief Medical Officer issuing a tweet today urging people to get vaccinated, take up the offer of a booster and to remember the importance of ventilation, masks in crowded indoor spaces and hand washing. Healthcare leaders are urging the government to move to Plan B now.
If you put COVID together with winter, together with the backlog that's built up over the last 18 months, that represents a kind of perfect storm for the NHS and care system. The government has themselves said that Plan B is what they will use if they feel the NHS is in danger of not being able to cope. And that danger, I now think, is real and present.
So far, the signs are that the government is adopting a wait-and-see approach before imposing any new rules on mask wearing, social distancing or working from home. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, I'm joined now by Dr. Julian Tang, who is a virologist. Dr. Tang, thanks so much for joining us lunchtime. So this call comes from the NHS. Do something now, bring vaccine passports into use, and mandatory face coverings, bring that back again in England. But the government not budging. They're saying not going to trigger their Plan B yet. As a virologist and looking at the figures, the infection rates, the amount of people going into hospital, the amount of deaths, what do you think should happen?
I think they need to trigger it as soon as they can, because we're going to see flu-related deaths as well. So normally each year we get maybe 10,000 to 30,000 excess deaths due to flu. If you add that to the COVID ongoing case numbers and deaths, it may be too much for the NHS to bear, given the burnt-out workforce that we have over the last 18 months, because of the backlog of cases that we haven't actually dealt with because of the COVID pandemic so far.
Yeah, of course, these are all factors to take into consideration. But another factor to take into account is that we are in a very different position this winter because of the vaccine. And that is what government is saying as well. We heard Chris Whitty there encouraging people to go out there, get the vaccine, go and get your booster shots when you're invited to as well. So we are in a different position, aren't we?
I think that's irrelevant. I mean, what you're looking at is the current position where the current state of the NHS is actually under a lot of stress at the moment. And we didn't have flu last year because of the COVID restrictions. We do have flu going back this year. We see it every day in our lab results. So the situation is different, but I don't think it's much better.
Is it irrelevant, though? Because we know that if you are double vaccinated, it greatly reduces your chances of, for example, being admitted into hospital, and that will relieve some pressure on the NHS, will it not?
So my comment about irrelevance is that comparing last year to this year is not really what you should be doing. What you should be doing is looking at the capacity of the NHS now to deal with what we're seeing now. And that includes flu-related cases coming in as well, going forward into the winter, where flu typically peaks in December, January. So I think last year's comparison is from last year. The current comparison is really how much capacity we have at the moment to deal with COVID currently. And going forward, the increasing number of flu cases we see, and every year we see ICU cases with flu in the normal kind of non-COVID era. And adding those flu cases to COVID and flu is coming back, you may have that burden increased several-fold.
And finally, Dr. Tan, briefly, if you can, if this Plan B is triggered, it will see the reintroduction of mandatory face masks in certain spaces, possibly vaccine passports. Is it all just a little bit too late, though, to try and reintroduce this now at this stage?
I don't think now is too late. I think what you can do now will help to reduce the number of cases we see in the future. And masking is not intrusive, it doesn't bother anybody. And those with vulnerability should probably mask anyway, voluntarily, just to protect themselves from more severe disease.
All right, Dr. Gillian Tang, thanks very much for talking to us on Lunchtime. Thank you. Now, the Queen has cancelled a trip to Northern Ireland and has reluctantly accepted medical advice to rest for the next few days. Buckingham Palace has said. I'm joined now by our royal editor, Chris Shipp. Chris, a surprise announcement today.
Yeah, a surprise announcement, and actually, Lucrezia, we may not have even been told about the Queen's enforced couple of days' rest had it not been for the visit to Northern Ireland. It's always kept secret, of course, because of security concerns, but when she cancelled it today, they had to give us a reason why. But the Queen was out and about as recently as last night. She was at a reception at Windsor Castle for the Global Investment Summit. The Prime Minister was there. She was joined by Prince Charles, Prince William. I mean, to the untrained eye, she looked pretty well, certainly not gravely ill. But what the palace is saying is that she's taken a couple of days' rest as a precaution. They say it's not COVID related. And when we ask things like, will she be able to go to the COP26, the big UN climate change summit at the end of this month where she's scheduled to be in Glasgow, they say, yes, that's still very much her intention. So what we're looking at here is a sort of period of rest for someone who's actually had quite a busy schedule since she came back from her annual holiday in Balmoral. She's been in various places, including out and about in Westminster Abbey last week, where we saw her using a walking stick for the first time. That stick was passed to her by her daughter, Princess Anne. We were told there was no reason for that stick other than that she was using it for comfort. And I think perhaps if we put all of this together, it is a reminder that the head of state is 95 years old, and there are certain things, I think, inevitably, because of her advancing years, that she simply will not be able to do. And I think when you talk about visits to Northern Ireland involving flights and a couple of days away, I think those are the kind of things that perhaps the palace will now have to look at. I do know, however, that when she was in Balmoral in the summer, she was out riding at least 5 times while she was there. So, we're not talking about someone who is in any way incapable, but certainly a reminder of her advancing years.
All right, Chris, thank you. The Home Secretary is calling for an update from the police into alarming reports of women being injected with date rape drugs while enjoying nights out in pubs and nightclubs. A number of young women have spoken out about the ordeal they have endured, and groups of students are now calling for a boycott of nightclubs, as Carrie Davis reports.
It's a classic bathroom selfie snapped to remember a night out with the girls. But even with the photos, 19-year-old student Sarah Buckle can barely recall a thing. She woke up in hospital with a bruise and a distinct pinprick on her hand.
All I know is my hand was throbbing the day after, but in the club, I just have nothing, absolutely nothing. It's terrifying. I feel really violated. I don't understand why. Why did they do this? And what potentially could have happened if my friends weren't there.
Police are investigating her case, and Sarah is not alone. A number of similar incidents are being reported on social media. One said, 4 of my daughter's friends were injected in a club the past weekend. They didn't know what had happened. Another, my 19-year-old goddaughter was out in Liverpool. She was injected by someone. Luckily, her friends were with her at the time. And another woman described having no recollection the morning after going clubbing. She said, I felt my leg. I touched the part where I was in the most pain and I found a pinprick. I had been spiked. In Nottingham last night, women said they were on high alert.
You can't fully relax into the night out. It's a shame because you can't fully enjoy it.
You always tell your friends, like, be careful of your drinks, like, make sure you cover it, or we'll hold each other's drinks. But, like, I don't know how you protect each other from injections.
No.
It kind of just puts you off, to be honest. I'd rather do other stuff in the day. Like, we went bowling, yeah. But I don't know about clubs. I don't know about clubs at the moment.
In front of a Commons Select Committee today, the woman who leads police work on sexual offences was asked about the scale of the problem.
At the moment, I can see that a number of police forces are investigating them. They haven't been raised to me. I think it's a fair assumption there may be a sexual motive in those. What I have been able to do this morning is speak to the National Crime Agency, who do look at trends that are moving across the system, so that we can pick up on it very quickly.
For now, it's another alarming addition to the list of potential threats women like Sarah feel forced to bear in mind. Carrie Davis, ITV News.
Well, joining me to talk more about this, I'm joined by Jocelyn Story, who is part of the campaign to boycott clubs, and Labour MP Nadia Whittome, who is in the Houses of Parliament. Thank you both for joining me this lunchtime. Jocelyn, let's start with you. We've heard many a warning about drinks being spiked, haven't we, before? But now this is a whole new thing, women being targeted with injections. How many people have you heard that they say that's happened to them?
Oh, the numbers just we've seen recently are absolutely terrifying. We've set up Girls' Night In as a national-led campaign by students to promote women's safety in a night out and hold venues to a greater accountability because they have a duty of care for people attending their events. We've had an anonymous tip line, and the amount of girls we've sent in already with photos of entry points of injection spikings and absolutely not remembering the night and being hospitalised. People are being almost paralysed, and it seems to be because girls, I think, are getting savvier with protecting their drinks that the people who are behind this are having to find alternative ways to commit crime, basically, because I think women we've been told to look after our drinks for so long, and I think greater searches of bags needs to be put in place to make sure that because the needles are getting in somehow.
Yeah, told to look after drinks, but also, we just saw it in that report from Carrie as well. Young women are saying, I don't even want to go out anymore. You hear from women who are changing how they dress as well. They're wearing thicker tights, denim jackets, things like that to protect themselves. It shouldn't have to be like that, should it?
No, for too long, the issue of women's safety has fallen into the hands of women. You're told to change your habits. Don't wear a dress out. Don't leave your drink unattended at the bar. And going out should be an enjoyable experience for everyone. Everyone deserves to feel safe on a night out. And it's just horrible that it's come to this level that girls are choosing to not go out. It's not just girls. Everyone can get spiked. It's affecting everyone on a national level. But to have to impact your university experience because a select few number of people are doing such awful things on nights out is...
I want to bring Nadia in at this point. Nadia, you're in another part of the country. Your constituency is Nottingham East, isn't it, I believe? It's happening all over the country, according to what we're hearing. What are women telling you that's happening to them, and what can we actively do to stop it?
As Jocelyn says, these reports are absolutely horrifying. I've received numerous emails and calls from constituents who some of whom have witnessed this, one of whom has experienced it themselves, and many who are just extremely scared about going out. And it shouldn't be like that. Women should be able to go out and enjoy themselves.
It shouldn't be like that,
fear
Nadia.
of assault.
Sorry to interrupt, but it shouldn't be like that. We heard that the Home Secretary is looking into this and doing something. But, you know, you as a Member of Parliament with your colleagues, what can we actually do now in terms of legislation? There's something that doesn't just perhaps inhibit how women live their lives.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that. So I've written to the Police and Crime Commissioner in Nottinghamshire to request an urgent update. I'm writing to the Home Secretary to ask her to work with me and with other women to come up with a national strategy, because this is, while spiking is not a new phenomenon, spiking by injection seems to be, and it's one that is very difficult to guard against, and of course women shouldn't have to guard against it, and there isn't really a way to guard against it. The only thing that can be done is for men to stop assaulting women through this. One of the things that needs to change is that there needs to be quick access to collecting evidence, because that needs to happen within a short period of time, and there needs to be proper support for women afterwards, because if someone has been sexually assaulted, then they can access help from a sexual assault referral centre, but if they haven't been, then they're often left without support. So those are two big things that need to change immediately.
Well, Nadia, we are out of time. Thank you so much, and I'm glad that you said that, because what the police are saying now is, well, make sure you report this if you think this has happened to you. Nadia, thank you. Jocelyn, thank you as well. Still to come, the new poster boy for tennis at Norrie, and why he has a reputation as a nightmare to play against. First, the surge in the cost of living eased last month, but it's not thought to signal an end to price rises. According to the Office for National Statistics, inflation fell slightly compared to August, but the hospitality industry has warned ITV News that the cost of eating and drinking out is going to get more expensive. Inflation was at 3.1% in September, down from 3.2%. However, that's still well above the Bank of England's target of 2%. Some of the biggest increases were in the transport sector. Average petrol prices were up 19% compared to a year ago. Air travel has also got more expensive, with fares up almost 10%. Meanwhile, games, toys and hobbies now cost us 6.4% more than last year. Our economics editor Joel Hills is at a toy store in Buckinghamshire. Joel, everyone, I suppose, is just having to live with a higher cost of living.
This is an extremely unusual time. This business, Nina, has been hit by price rises across the board. Almost all of the toys on sale here are imported. Shipping costs have gone through the roof. We've seen factories in China charge more for the toys that they make. And here in the UK, wages are rising because there's a scarcity of people to work on shop floors, to work in warehouses, to man the vans that deliver ultimately. And today, clear evidence that it's not just retailers that are being affected by this. Hospitality UK has told ITV News that many of its members in bars, restaurants, pubs and hotels are seeing cost price of inflation of between 13 and 15% across the board. Eating out, drinking out is about to become more expensive.
It's potentially devastating for businesses in the sector, the level of cost price inflation that we are seeing. It's not unusual to see cost prices coming through, but to have it hitting in every single line of the business simultaneously, it is a toxic cocktail of costs that is unsustainable longer term.
Many hotels, many bars, many restaurants, many businesses borrowed a lot of money to get them through lockdown. The last thing they want to see is interest rate rises. Now, until now, the Bank of England has seen this period of high inflation as temporary, but at the weekend, the Governor, Andrew Bailey, suggested that interest rate rises may have to happen to get inflation or keep it under control. Now, at the moment, bank rate is 0.1%. Markets are betting it will be 1% by next summer. Rising interest rates are not going to conjure up people to fill vacancies. They won't do much to help shipping costs or drive down energy bills. They will, however, cause people's living standards to be squeezed, and they will slow economic growth. The Bank of England seems to think this is a price potentially worth paying to keep inflation under control.
All right, Joel, thank you. And house prices have jumped by more than 10% in a year. The average price for a property in August was £264,000, according to the Office for National Statistics, £25,000 higher than the summer before. And finally, fresh from his triumph at Indian Wells in America, Britain's men's tennis #1, Cameron Norrie, says he was inspired by fellow Brit Emma Raducanu's stunning performance at the US Open. Well, now the 26-year-old has his sights set on dominating the world rankings, as Antoine Allen reports.
Cam Norrie is a Masters 1000. Just 4 years ago, Cameron Norrie was an amateur tennis player. Today, he's an Indian Wells champion and British #1. At the National Tennis Centre in London, Norrie has taken his place as Britain's new male tennis star.
Feels great, obviously, coming off such a big win in Indian Wells, and so special to be the British #1, and there's only a handful of names out there, so it's definitely a big deal for me.
Norrie was born in South Africa but grew up in New Zealand. In his teens, he moved to the UK with his British parents.
I've lived all over, and yeah, being a tennis player, it's not easy. I mean, we're travelling all the time, so I guess my New Zealand accent's kind of sticked a little bit.
Norrie's left-handing playing style, combined with his growing confidence, has made him a player few look forward to facing on the court.
Basically, bottom line is a nightmare to play against, and I think when people see my name next to theirs, they're like, oh, it's Norrie, I'm in for a long day today. So hopefully it's nice to hold that reputation.
Emma Raducanu's triumph at the US Open raised the bar for the next generation of British tennis players. Norrie says he was inspired by Raducanu's performance.
Incredible stuff to come out and really own the court, and to take it to all her opponents, and she I think chopped up everyone's straight sets, won pretty comfortably all her matches.
Norrie's victory was only the second tournament win of his career, but from now on he joins a growing generation of Brits we expect to bring home more silverware. Antoine Allen, ITV News.
Well, hopefully the future's looking bright for Cam Norrie. And that is it this lunchtime. Mary is here with the evening news at 6:30. The news where you are follows the national weather. But for now, from everyone here on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.
Not everywhere will be cold today. Some places will be warm and toasty. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.
It's all change for us within the next 24 hours. The mild air gives way as chillier air works its way in from the north. Blustery and bright in the meantime, with some hefty, potentially thundery downpours. Lots going on this afternoon. Brighter skies and cheerful sunshine on the earlier satellite and radar picture, but a deluge across northern Britain and North Wales. Here, the rain really quite steady, heavy, rumbles of thunder possible, hit and miss downpours elsewhere. Some of these giving rumbles of thunder, whipping through at quite a pace in those brisk winds. Elsewhere, brighter skies, but staying blustery. And in that southwesterly airstream, we keep the relatively mild air. Further north, a cooler, fresher feel to the day, the sign of things to come as the rain slides its way through northern Scotland. At the opposite end of the country, heavy rain slides its way across those southern counties through much of the night. And then come dawn, with the clearer skies and that northerly airstream becoming established, temperatures fall. A touch of frost and close to freezing further north.
Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.